The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, we're back. How you doing?
We are back. I'm good. Spent a little weekend away. Told people that some crazy news was going to drop while I was away. That only kind of 10% happened because actually 0% happened because the Ayton news dropped the night before. We were able to get that podcast out. And then, no KD trade. We're still at the same point. So I figured it was time for a mailbag at this point in the offseason, I guess, just to sort of address where people are.
Yeah.
I think everyone's kind of mental outlook on the Suns is a little bit different at this point. Obviously, a lot of KD questions.
Yeah.
But some other stuff, too.
I mean, Ayton did sign his contract, so we did get that. That was like the only other major thing. Summer League is also over now. The Suns played pretty well. Ish Wainwright played well. I think we'll address Ish at some point in these questions, I imagine.
I feel like we've gotten a lot of cryptic tweets in the past 3 or 4 days. We're sort of just at that point in the offseason. I've seen him from McHale. I've seen him from... Well, Ish's wasn't really cryptic.
Yeah.
I think he just tweeted the other day, patience, one word, which to me is like pretty obvious what that means. He's still waiting on a contract from the Suns. If they signed him right now, he would be taking up what is currently their 15th and final full-time guaranteed roster spot. So
pretty clear what's happening there, and that the Suns are just trying to make a trade and then finish out the roster after the trade is done. They don't know what the roster is going to be, and that sucks for Ish Wainwright. And we'll see if something happens there. I did find the comment. There was a direct question to DeAndre Ayton about how his relationship with Monty Williams is right now. I did find that comment to be at least a little bit funny, in that he described it as a single word, calm. Which I don't know.
Doubt.
As opposed to I don't know.
Press X to doubt that one. Yeah.
I would say that that's probably true. And for those who are worried, if there's any people out there that are like concerned about their relationship going forward, I don't think that... Here's what I'll say. I think it's fair to be concerned about the relationships between players on a contender. And because I think there are just such small things that can change your ability to win at the highest level. And sometimes the relationships between players and coaches and whatever else you want to say, owners, for example, sometimes that can affect it. That can have an impact on it. I don't think that we have seen anything from DeAndre Ayton in his career outside of just one blip in Game 7 and Monty Williams in his career outside of that Game 7 as well to make us think that they can't get over it. So while I do think it's fair to be slightly worried about it, I think those two are not the people that I would be worried about at this point. And I guess we'll see if their relationship remains calm. Luckily, the Suns don't actually leak anything, so I guess we'll have no idea going into it.
Does that mean you're worried about someone else who's like currently on the team? Because that sort of implies...
No, I would say... Well, yeah, I would say that that relationship... I would say that DeAndre Ayton and his ability to remain happy on this team is probably my primary concern. If I had to like outline a concern when it comes to... But I would say that DeAndre Ayton himself and his personality and what he's done so far on this team, I feel okay about that being my primary concern. Mm-hmm. And, they can still trade him if they actually have to at some point.
Right, sure. No, that's kind of where I am, too. I just want to clarify, like, Ayton is the biggest reason for concern, chemistry-wise, just in terms of the players who are currently on the roster. But this isn't Eric Bledsoe or Markieff Morris or a million other names we've dealt with in the past passing through this organization, at least based on what we've seen from him through 4 years. I don't really think there's any reason to believe it turns into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
I do think there is like the concept of him not actually liking his role. And people have addressed that by saying, well, it's just he wanted money. And, maybe money will just
That's kind of where I stand on it, but
yeah, and maybe they're right. Maybe they're
feel
right
differently.
But no, I don't necessarily feel differently. I think that I'm just waiting to see, I guess, at this point, if that's really the case, if it really was just about money, or if there was, the rumblings about him being unhappy with his role and looking for a team that would give him a larger role are true. If the Suns end up trading for KD,
that would be dope.
Kawhi is on my screen right in front of me. But if the Suns end up trading for KD, once again, his role actually shrinks. It gets smaller on this team. So him being happy with that role is important for the Suns to maintain their contender status if they end up making the trade, or even if they don't. He still has to remain happy with it or find a way to increase his reps. So we'll see what ends up happening. Let's get into questions. We got a bunch. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I'm sure we're going to talk about something like that at some point. I'm going to go in the order that Twitter decides. I click the tweet. We're going to try and get as many as possible in a reasonable podcast length here. So thank you guys for asking us questions. Zach Harwood said, would you rather this is about Ayton, give Ayton Booker's mentality and competitiveness, or B, give Book DA's size and physical tools? I'll let you go first on that one.
Book with DA's, both of those are incredibly amazing players, right?
Yeah.
Those are, how are those not just the same player?
Well, I think I think of that as the same player as well. And by that, I would say in the option where we give Ayton Booker's mentality and competitiveness, does that mean Devin Booker's still on the team as his current Devin Booker?
Wait. Well, that would be great, but I'm just thinking through it, and I understand. So if you gave Ayton Booker's competitiveness, that's great, but you're not giving him Booker's handling and shooting and stuff like that, right? Whereas if you give Booker Ayton's physical tools, in addition to already being the shooter and the ball handler,
so he's
and
Giannis,
the competitive leader.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck Giannis.
Yeah,
he's basically
the best player of all time.
I think he's a player that we've never seen in the history of the NBA, possibly.
Can he still not bend over or catch passes, bounce passes in that case?
Is that yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I think I would go with giving Ayton Booker's mentality and competitiveness, because I think Devin Booker is an insanely hard worker, and maybe that's a part of Devin Booker in his career that we don't talk about enough for people to realize it. And to get to where he's at, considering he was picked 13th, is pretty remarkable. So I think I'd go with that one.
I think Booker with Ayton's physical tools, and then that's when Chris Paul and Devin Booker already play well together. But now, if you could imagine the pick and roll duo that would create. If Booker was suddenly 7 feet tall and 250 pounds, but moved like a guard, then I'm going with that. That's pretty amazing.
It's terrifying. Let's see. Joshua Pasco said he has two questions. One, of the signings the Suns have made so far, who do you see making the biggest impact? And then he listed them: Lee, Okogie, and Landale. So let's start there. Damian Lee, Josh Okogie, Jock Landale. Which of those do you think makes the biggest impact? Those are all pretty small impact guys, right?
Well,
minimum contracts.
Landale, I think, has something to play for, but he's definitely fallen in the past week in the depth chart now that we know Ayton is back.
Right,
he's the fourth center now, sort of, as the roster currently stands, because I would put both Dario Saric and Bismack Biyombo ahead of him.
I mean, but
I still
with
think
Ayton returning, I guess we haven't addressed this yet. That makes Dario more likely to be traded, right? Just because of his contract size?
Yeah, and I mean, look, there's a bunch of questions about this too, I'm sure, but the Suns need bench depth and they need guard depth desperately, and so if we're at a point where there aren't really any free agent options left for that, then the best you can do is either flip Dario or flip Crowder or flip Landry Shamet. Those would be the three contracts, I think, in about that $10 million range that make the most sense to do that with. Dario is definitely more in danger post DA trade, post DA re-signing. But also, Dario is the only guy. Well, I don't know if I would even say this, because Landale can shoot threes. Dario is kind of the only guy, though, who gives you really that.
He's the best player.
He's the best player of who? The remaining three?
Of the backup centers, I think he's just the best basketball player, right?
Are we? He's the most skilled. Are we sure he's better than Bismack Biyombo coming off 2 knee injuries?
No, that's a good point.
I would like to say yes. I'm just not 100% sure. But he definitely gives you an element of floor spacing that, like, no matter what, Bismack Biyombo doesn't give you.
He's also the quickest decision maker of the group, which I think is a massive thing.
What was the original question?
Which one do you see making the biggest impact? By the way, if we're including Biyombo in there, it's Biyombo, right?
Well, he was yes.
I know he's not including those guys, but
wait.
Lee,
The original question, yes, was who makes the biggest impact of those guys. I think it's Okogie.
I think I thought you would say that.
I'd said that at the time of the signing, and I still think it's him, just because he's the only one who kind of fulfills a role that no one else does, or fulfills a role out of those three guys that's like something being on ball, perimeter, point of attack, defense that like the Suns really desperately need. And these other guys just don't necessarily do. Although maybe, if there's no KD trade, then I can't say that either. Then Okogie just is reduced to like a third string
Peyton
10-minute per game. Yeah, he's an Elfrid Payton type. So I don't know. None of these guys are guaranteed a role at this point in the season. In the context of a KD trade, it's definitely Okogie for me.
I'm going to roll the dice and say Damian Lee, just because we've seen him shoot 39% from three in the past. If he's capable of doing that for the Suns, that would make him one of the best 3-point shooters on the Suns. So I'll just say Damian Lee for now. Tall, relatively tall guy, capable of shooting threes potentially in the past, just not this last season. So we'll see. His second question is, which existing rostered Suns player makes the biggest jump or impact for the team year on year? So he's essentially saying which team... Hashtag internal development. Which team? Which player is better next year? The highest potential player is Ayton. Now, one thing I'll say though is if you're just looking at box scores between year over year, there is the chance that Jay Crowder's gone and Cameron Johnson starts the season as a starting power forward, and his stats are going to jump the most. Like that's I think the guy that could have the largest statistical jump between seasons, and that's the guy I think I would bet on.
Yeah, I think Cam Johnson, again, it depends on Crowder's situation, and Crowder would either have to be gone from the team entirely or just like be taking a significant backseat role, but I could easily see Cam Johnson average 16 to 18 points per game in a starting four role next year without actually getting any better as a player or with only making very marginal improvements. Right. And so I think a lot of people would naturally look at him if that does happen, especially going into his own contract situation, which again, we're not sure if the Suns are going to handle. I suppose at this point in the offseason, it's now July 20th as we record this, the Cam Johnson contract, obviously they're still chasing down KD, but that's kind of like the whole Cam Johnson situation is one of the last remaining questions to address at this point in the summer, because you already handled business. You brought back DeAndre Ayton. You already handled business on Devin Booker. So that's kind of the next thing as we look ahead. And obviously there's luxury tax questions now and all sorts of stuff that casts a shadow over that. But yeah, I think Cam Johnson could jump the most statistically. Who actually improves most as a player from a skill development standpoint? It's still DeAndre Ayton. It's his potential is still sky high compared to these wing players who I think are just kind of history would say that they mostly are what they are at this point. By the time you're like a 25, 26-year-old guy, and maybe there's marginal improvements they can make too. But yeah, it's Ayton for sure.
Yeah. All right. B Red C Red said, where do the Suns end up seated if they run it back with Ish, and what round exit are they? And this question is fascinating.
No faith in them being a championship team there, huh?
I think, well, don't you think, and maybe it's just me on this, because I don't think we've addressed this on the podcast. I think, meaning, I'm not sure you and I have even talked about it, really. Don't you think the range of which they could be is massive in that case, being that I could see them being a 1 seed and I could see them being a play-in, and neither of those would surprise me at this point? It would surprise me, I think, if they were completely out of like the play-in range, but if they were the 7th seed in, let's say, Chris Paul misses some time or something like that, and that's all it would take for to make them be a play-in team at that point, and I think the range of what they could be, I wouldn't be confident in betting anything on this team at this point.
Yeah, I think that says more about the state of the Western Conference than anything, though, because I think kind of all of these teams going in have their own levels of uncertainty.
And even injury concern. Like every team has a little bit of injury concern at this point.
Yeah, and every single team, I think it's for slightly different reasons. Some of these teams are young teams that are making flashy moves. I guess, you want to look at Minnesota with the Gobert acquisition, for instance. Like they have, I would say that's one of the teams with a huge range as well, where that could entirely blow up in their face, or they could also be a number one seed in the Western Conference if absolutely everything hit right. Whereas you have other teams that are at a very different stage of the life cycle.
The Nuggets
in being a championship contender. The Nuggets,
the Pelicans, if Zion comes back.
Pelicans with Zion, obviously the Clippers, who are my favorite going into next season. If I know that's going to get some jokes from people, but they are my favorite to be the number one seed in the Western Conference if the Suns do not get Kevin Durant.
Are they?
I still believe that.
Can I ask you this though? Are you saying that you're confident that they remain healthy enough to win enough games to be the number one seed? Okay, because that's like a bigger question mark.
I'm just saying if you laid out all the teams that could be the number one seed in the Western Conference,
they're the best on paper.
There's like 6 of them, and possibly more if like the Lakers get Kyrie Irving or whatever. But there's like a lot of those teams, and the Clippers have like maybe a 20% chance, whereas other teams have like a 14% chance. It's that sort of thing. Right. They're by no means an overwhelming favorite, but they do deserve to be in that conversation for the amount of talented and vetted veteran role players they've added over the past year, while also getting back 2 healthy star players. Not to mention John Wall, who I don't really know what he does for that team yet, but it's at least interesting.
All right. Nate said, you think if you told your bubble era self about...
Wait, did we ever answer the question of what seed?
Oh, I mean, my answer to that is I wouldn't put any. I wouldn't want to make a prediction.
That's fine.
I think we've successfully maintained a podcast that makes no predictions.
I think they're a second round loss.
We'll do an over under. We'll do an over under podcast before the season starts, based on whatever the roster ends up being, and we'll put something on paper at that point. Nate said, you think if you told your bubble era self about the buzz around the team now, finals run, second round loss, Ayton re-signing, KD's preferred destination, that person would be excited for the future? Yeah. I think a finals run and a loss in the finals sounds a lot more fun until you experience it. After you've experienced it, you're like, wow, this is actually really stressful and tiring, and ended really sadly. But
and the expectations, they're just completely different now.
Yeah, but the level of vindication I think you feel just as a Suns fan is nice, regardless of how a lot of fan bases end up turning. The thing about teams that win, a lot of fan bases end up hating you, and you just kind of have to get used to being the butt of a lot of jokes, especially when something like that Game 7 happened in the second round loss.
It's amazing how quickly the transition happened, because for years the Suns were already the butt of jokes for years.
Right. I mean, I think that's why the transition was so simple, right? You just changed the punchline.
I guess it was simple because you changed the punchline, but that still doesn't explain why people on the internet, and by people I mean like specifically fans. I honestly think the whole national media thing is overblown.
Well, Reddit really has gone crazy.
Oh my god, dude! I can't go over there anymore. But I just like national media people, maybe not so much in the past year or so, but just regular old fans. Why they all have this much reason to hate this team is kind of beyond me. Like, if you're a Lakers fan, you got eliminated directly by the Suns. If you're a Nuggets fan, you got eliminated. If you're a Pelicans fan, you got eliminated. I understand those people.
Yeah.
But like Warriors fans, we never even had the matchup that we were kind of anticipating all year.
Well,
I think they
Chris
just
Paul.
kind of like. They just, I guess that they just kind of create this massive hive mind that swarms everything, and I don't know. Yeah, it's the internet weird. The internet hate is a little weird to me at this point, because I don't get it.
One thing we know about Reddit is if somebody comes up with an original joke, everyone else will beat that dead horse as long as possible.
beat it into the ground.
Exactly.
And eventually they'll move on.
Right.
They'll move on to a new thing eventually.
Coming up with the original jokes, it's not their forte.
I think none of it takes away from your original point, though, and I've said this a lot of times in the past too, which is it doesn't matter that much, because it is, at the end of the day, a good thing to be hated. If you're hated in the NBA, it means you've beaten a lot of people, and that's where you want to be.
Yeah, you don't want to be the spooky team, right? Oh, you're going to be spooky next year. Next year, you might be spooky.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than being the spooky team that like
Condescending,
gets eliminated as the set. That's who the Wolves have been to this point.
Right.
The Wolves,
or the
have
Pelicans
been, the
this
Wolves,
year. I think they're the spooky team, right?
Oh, they're spooky.
Yep,
I mean,
year.
if they get Zion back
Yep.
plus Ingram, did you see the trade they did? Oh, they're gonna be spooky. Yeah, no, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to be in that position either. So
Yeah, I mean, you're
important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, fans of other teams love you when you're not a threat. I mean, that's the reality.
Exactly.
Of it.
That really is all it comes down to.
Patrick asks, obviously I want KD, and we should do everything we can to get him. But if we do get him, and then a year later we haven't seen much playoff success, is it reasonable to expect that he will request a trade from the Suns? It's funny. The day that the news came out about Kevin Durant asking out and then requesting the Suns, you were asleep, Sam, and I went on Spaces and I mentioned exactly this. There is a mandate, essentially, to James Jones and to the Phoenix Suns to create the best possible environment and the best possible team around Kevin Durant in order to keep him happy, because he is at the tail end of his career and he will take advantage of any opportunity he can in order to win a championship. And we've seen the kind of offers a player like that is getting in the Nets. And yeah, I don't think it's completely insane. The Suns have to do the right thing it just depends on how it happens, I think.
Yeah. So just to answer the question, or to address the question directly, of course, that threat is there. I think that threat is very present, and that's probably the primary reason we are not directly behind the scenes. We don't know exactly what James Jones has offered at this point, but I do tend to believe the reports that would indicate that Brooklyn has not gotten anything even resembling close to what they want in a deal. Not even just talking about the star players, but it would surprise me if the Suns had offered all 7 first-round picks or whatever at this point, because I just don't think Phoenix is competing with anyone right now to the point where they really have to do that. And so I think a lot of what goes into that depressed trade offer and where we are currently with the situation in July as it continues to drag out is that James Jones realizes just how much of a risk he's making. And look, it would be tough. It's not enough of a risk for me to stop myself from wanting, I think, ultimately getting the best possible player and giving yourself the best possible chance for a championship next year. And that's kind of just the most important thing to me right now over any type of regular season, look how many games we're winning vibes. I just want playoff success, and I firmly believe Kevin Durant is the clearest path to playoff success for the Phoenix Suns. So that's what goes into it.
The Suns and their assets that they have are fascinating right now, right before a Kevin Durant trade, but they're not completely uninteresting afterwards. The Suns still have DeAndre Ayton signed to a long-term contract. If they trade for Kevin Durant, they actually can't trade all their swaps. They have the ability of potentially swapping some picks with teams after that, and then we'll see what ends up happening. There is the possibility of coming into a scenario where they could build for cap space. They still have the ability of potentially doing that for a future year, being that Chris Paul's contracts beyond this next season are not fully guaranteed. If they have to trade Kevin Durant, of course, they could potentially find a ways to make cap space around that. And, they have the ability of making moves properly after that if they end up having to. So we'll see what ends up happening.
You've got Ayton inked to the 4-year extension. You could always scrap the entire team around him, build around him like he's always wanted, and give him the 150 touches per game.
Just signed the point guard with the best ability to throw lob passes into the post, and just go from there. Garrett Dunn said, "Should we be worried about Monty? I feel like we haven't talked enough about his lack of adjustments in the Mavs series, let alone Game 7." It's a good question, and I will say for us, we did talk about it in the first few podcasts after that game. But I think a lot of people skip those. Probably.
Well, I was also going to say, it's the type of thing, like even now, I'm still pissed off about Game 7, but I feel like I can't talk about it as frequently anymore because people just don't want to hear it anymore. And I understand that. And it's sort of a similar thing with Monty where it's like, how many times can we rehash the same conversation about lack of adjustments in that final series before it's just beating a dead horse and giving yourself no other content to cover throughout a long off season? So I think that's part of what goes into, if you're not hearing directly the conversation maybe as often as you'd like. But I don't know, man. I think I'm curious to hear your take on this, but just mine quickly is that like Monty, if there's anyone who I think the way that they went out is eating them up inside, in this organization, I think that's probably happening to a lot of people, but it's definitely happening to Monty Williams. And just generally based on what I've seen from him, I do believe he has the ability to learn from his mistakes on this. And he's just one of the most thoughtful, reflective voices in the organization. And I know talk is cheap and you actually need to see results, but with Monty, I think he can make those adjustments in the future. I'm not overly worried.
I would say that I'm slightly worried about him compared to before. I felt more confident in him before that Mavs series than I do afterwards. If I just had to boil it down to just that. But I think I agree with you. I think that, and I also think that it's sort of easier for people to tend to focus on the things that were mistakes than the amount that they've brought to the team overall. And of course, what Monty has brought to this team is everything, kind of, right? Outside of what Devin Booker brought, I think all of the rest of the credit kind of goes to Monty at that point. So
Kevin Durant would not be considering them without Monty Williams.
Chris Paul wouldn't have either.
I suspect.
Right? Yeah. It all starts with Devin Booker, right? Devin Booker is the reason Monty's here, and then Monty and Devin Booker together brought Chris Paul here, and now Devin Booker, along with Monty and Chris Paul, are what Kevin Durant's interested in. So it all flows down from there. But I think you're right. I think that he has shown. I think there's just a chance that the Suns had some data that said the Mavericks do worse on switches than when you fight over or under a screen, and they wanted to count on that to potentially win the game at the end. They were counting on the data, and it just didn't work. Yeah, I think that it's probably as simple as that. They had COVID. It's weird, and I'm not trying to make an excuse here, but it probably felt. I had COVID recently. I could barely get out of bed. I'll be 100% honest. It probably felt like too big of a hill to climb at some point in that Game 7 if they came into that series with potentially multiple players having COVID. Which is what I've heard, to be 100% honest, that multiple players, at least 2, is what I've heard. Which, if you want to argue about whether or not they should have been playing, you probably have to have a bigger conversation about the entirety of the playoffs, because I think that was happening a lot more often than just that game, from my knowledge. Drew asks, what's up with Jordan Clarkson? Or is there another player we can target to help make sure CP isn't cooked by the playoffs for the third year straight? By the way, a lot of people, I think, are asking about the bench at this point, from what I've seen just doing a cursory glance at some of the questions. And Jordan Clarkson is one of them. Let me look up. Do you have Jordan Clarkson's contract numbers off the top of your head by any chance?
Not off the top of my head, but I can pull them up. Looks like he $13.3 million next season.
That's it, huh?
And a 14.2 player option the next year, which he'll take. I think he'll take.
I mean, I would doubt that. I think he's kind of figured out. I don't know how to describe. I think it's unfair when you say players are figured out, because they can always just make slight adjustments. But I think you know what he's going to bring, and I doubt he's going to make more than that at his age. At this point of his career. So you would essentially be trading for a player. It's interesting, right? Because I think there was a report today. Did you see this about how many picks the Jazz were asking for Donovan Mitchell? Have you seen this?
I haven't seen the most recent.
Do you want to guess how many there supposedly in the reports?
I mean, is it 8?
The initial
they want 8?
The initial ask was 8 in one report, and then it was refuted by the people that they were being aggregated of. And Tony Jones said he's heard 6 or 7. So, okay. 6 or 7, I think, is the asking price here. So I think we know what the Jazz want. They're doing the OKC thing. They're trying to get as many picks as possible and then just kind of tanking to see if they can get Wemby.
I mean, in some ways, Jordan Clarkson is a great tank commander.
That's a good point.
He's you need someone to put the ball in the basket, right? And I know they're not actively trying to win games, but Clarkson is a guy who can go out there and if you give him 35 minutes, he'll find a way to get 20 shots up.
Yeah,
and he'll have games where he explodes for 30 or even 40 points, and he won't have a good season overall. It'll be very, Jerry Stackhouse-esque, I suppose. It'll be back to kind of the early 2000s dead ball era sometimes of the way it looks. You might shoot 40% from the field, but you could do it. You could do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as whether or not the Suns would trade for him, I've said this in our Discord. I don't think I've said it on a podcast. I'm just not a huge fan of him. of Jordan Clarkson in general, but I do think that he would undoubtedly bring some sort of offensive edge to the bench that's not there currently, which is just a player that's capable of catching fire on any night. And I think that his decision-making is sort of not really Suns-esque. It's not quite .5 style basketball. It's a classic gunner that gets out there and shoots. And, I think that if the Suns were to end up trading for him, I think that you could obviously envision a scenario where he would benefit the team. But my first gut reaction when thinking about Jordan Clarkson on the Suns is a negative reaction. How do you feel?
I mean, at a certain point, man, the Suns need, I feel like what we've been sold at this point is this element of being 3 deep at every position, right? That's what James Jones, he said 3 deep at every position. He said it a million times. And it works for the regular season, but at a certain point, with the breakdown that we saw in the playoffs last year, it's not about having 15 guys who are technically playable in a regular season game. It's about having 6, 7, 8 guys who are damn good in a playoff game. And that's where I think you start to see the differences between a guy like Jordan Clarkson and a guy like Landry Shamet. Landry Shamet is a .5 guy to the T. And look, I know, we dunk on Landry maybe a little bit too much on the pod, but he would probably be the guy who's going out in this trade in the first place. So I think that it's worth it to make the comparison. Landry's the .5 guy to the T. What does that really do for you in a playoff setting? That's been the question all along. Clarkson may not be the .5 guy, but the bench kind of just needs a gunner. I don't know. It needs to be the right type of gunner is my thing. So for Clarkson, I really like, obviously, the pull-up shooting. There are other aspects of his offensive game that aren't great. That would be a little bit ugly, but you could pretty easily talk me into the idea that, the Suns offense needs something like this, especially if, some people have brought up questions, could you just stagger Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker? And in the playoffs, you could stagger them, I think, to an extent, assuming that they're all healthy, but A, that's never a guarantee. B, I think there's legitimate reason to believe that if you could get those 3 guys on the court at the same time, that's when the team would be playing at its best. So you want to maximize the amount of minutes where you can actually do that. And what that means is you need to limit the amount of time that you can stagger and have another guard option who can eat up minutes, both in the regular season and to an extent in the playoffs. Without necessarily needing to be on the floor at the same time as those other guys. And Clarkson could definitely do that. If Kevin Durant misses 25 games and Chris Paul misses 25 games next season, Clarkson could be the guy who fills in the gap and makes sure that you just win enough regular season games to retain a top 4 seed or something like that. Whereas I don't really see Landry Shamet being that guy. So a gunner would not be the worst thing in the world. That's all I'm saying.
I buy it. Benito asks, who are your last-minute trade targets if we don't get KD by training camp? Would they even be significant since the Suns may hope to acquire KD at the trade deadline? And I think this is an interesting question. Basically, let's start here, Sam. If the Suns have yet to make a trade by, a few weeks before training camp, which is not that far away for the record,
do they pivot?
Yeah. Or do you think they should hold steady?
I think it's a good question.
And try and hold on to those assets to try and make a trade midseason?
I think they don't. I think they don't pivot. I think they hold steady. They go in with the group that they currently have. A lot of people are going to whine and understandably be frustrated about it. Like me, for myself, I've said all along, I don't want to be given the whole internal development continuity spiel again. If the Suns just come back with the exact same roster, I'd be disappointed because I don't fully believe in that core's ability to win a championship anymore. Again, it's not about regular season success. It's about winning a championship. Understanding that aspect of it, I also know how difficult it is to actually perform the day-to-day operations of an NBA GM and to actually get these things to line up on a reasonable timeline to where you can get the player that you want. So I know now, for me, the timeline has shifted. It's not about who the Suns go into the season with. It's about who the Suns go into the playoffs with, for me. It is not the end of the world if you go into the regular season with still pursuing Kevin Durant, but the trade has not materialized yet, and you still just basically at that point are running it back as of October or November 1st or whatever. I don't think that's a doomsday scenario. If you let the trade deadline pass and you go into the next playoff cycle, and at that point you still don't have Kevin Durant, and you also still have not pivoted to then evaluate the field, see what other stars are out there by the trade deadline, see what other high ceiling role players are out there by the deadline, and you go into the playoffs with the same exact roster, that's a failure to me. But I just want to draw the distinction between the two, because I think it's starting to look likely that if the Suns don't get Kevin Durant, and I still very much hope that they do, they could continue to pursue him for a while. There would be some point like later on in the season where it's probably time to give up the ghost and pursue other things. But the very beginning of the regular season is not that point in time for me. You might feel differently.
No, I think I feel the same, but I will make the point that if the Nets are just looking for good players, then the Suns trading players they have for other good players could still potentially help them come the trade deadline, if that's when they end up having to load up their assets for. I think the one case is if they're looking for picks, maybe you're giving up picks in that scenario and trying to trade for good players. And then, of course, I think there's another scenario, which, by the way, if you're a listener here and you're looking for like a daily dose of hopium, feel free to skip ahead 15 seconds here. But Kevin Durant could be traded to another team at some point. That's not the Phoenix Suns, which would just end the dream of Kevin Durant to the Suns. Now, do I think that's likely? I don't know. We'll probably discuss that at some point in these questions, but it's a possibility at this point. So in that case, I think it's fair to assume that the Suns have also discussed or thought of a list of other players to potentially move forward to improve this team outside of Kevin Durant. I'll throw one player out that we haven't talked about. We talked about him last year. I'll just talk about him right now. Harrison Barnes. He plays for the Sacramento Kings. He would be an excellent starting power forward for the Phoenix Suns. I know I
like the way you said that. Like you have to remind people of who is still on the Kings roster.
Yeah, I mean, people might not know. I mean, he's been in trade talks for a while. He started the season like red hot last year. Was essentially like basically almost a 50, 40, 90 guy for the first 20 or so games of the season, averaging 19 points a game. As basically the number one option on that team briefly. The team just retooled. He was injured briefly for a while, came back, wasn't quite the same as the beginning of the season, but I think that team was going through a lot of changes throughout the second half of the season. But Harrison Barnes has the size to play power forward. He has the ability to attack off of closeouts that the Suns kind of need at that position, and he's just better offensively than Jay Crowder and arguably comparable defensively. Like, he's not that much different defensively.
Yeah. I think he's worse, but he shoots the heck out of the ball, so at a certain point you can forgive the defensive differences. I brought up Barnes at the last trade deadline as one of those guys where it's like, either we go for him or we go for Eric Gordon, but in some sense here, let's give up a first-round pick. That was the idea at the time. And yeah, I mean, Barnes he's your Andrew Wiggins, right? Like, he's not consistently going to be a number 2 or even number 3 scorer on this team, I don't think, if you acquire him. But there would be games in the playoffs where Harrison Barnes gives you 25 points, and Jay Crowder could just never do that. Could Cam Johnson do that? Maybe. But if you're starting to think about pivoting away from Cam Johnson too because of all this luxury tax stuff, then he's a name that makes sense. I understand it's quite the downgrade from Kevin Durant, and the Suns would probably cop some jokes online as a result of that, but you got to do what you got to do.
Harrison Barnes has 20 games with 30 or more points, which would put him third on the Suns. That's
he's been in the NBA for more than a decade at this point.
Yeah,
right? But
that's
an average. That's an average of
around a decade. Yeah,
that's an average of 3 games per year. But yeah. He's for sure a good player.
But he can do it a few times a year, right? Which is something that I don't know that Jay Crowder was.
Jay Crowder cannot do.
So it's just an example of a player who plays really well, would fit right in, I think, culture-wise, and is smart. Like, he's a smart NBA player that would fit into the starting lineup. Now, does that mean it's going to be easy for you to go from talking yourself into Kevin Durant to talking yourself into Harrison Barnes? No. But if you can find a way to get Harrison Barnes by just giving up, if you can keep Mikal Bridges and keep Cameron Johnson after a Harrison Barnes trade, well, then you have depth and you have good players, a starting lineup that fits, and just a great team all around that could potentially still be really great. So there's just a name that I wanted to throw out there. And I think if it comes down to it, if it looks like Kevin Durant's either not going to be traded or going to be traded somewhere else, I think we could probably get into that question a little bit more. But even like Harrison Barnes, if the Suns find a way for trading for Harrison Barnes without, sorry, my phone's ringing, without giving up too much, like a pick, for example, maybe Harrison Barnes could be
James Jones.
Maybe
he has sources.
Maybe he could be part of a Kevin Durant trade in the future, which, by the way, yes, I find the irony of that as well. But they want good players, and Harrison Barnes could be one of those. Let's see. Scenics.
Are you telling me telling me you don't have a secret life as a Suns insider on the side with your phone ringing there, man?
I have multiple
that could be
phones.
anyone.
Yeah. I keep them. Yeah, I just tell them to text.
Burners at all times.
Yep. Scenics Funds said, "What are some of the names you want the Suns to fill their roster with via FA or trade?
Love that name.
In trades, what realistic pieces could the Suns get for low assets after our depth is gutted in a trade for KD?" So I think I wasn't sure if he meant before or after the imaginary Kevin Durant trade that we continue to talk about. Yeah, sounds like he means.
Well, yeah, because if the KD trade doesn't come, just to remind people, the Suns currently have 14 players under contract. If they sign Ish Wainwright, which we're still, I think, expecting them to do, even if KD doesn't come, I guess technically they might not. But I feel like they've pretty clearly made a promise to Ish Wainwright at this point. Then he's guy number 15. And so at that point, you need to wheel and deal and trade 1 for 1 or 2 for 2 or whatever. But they're not bringing in anyone else off just a standard free agent signing that way. So if a KD trade happens and we suddenly have 2 or 3 or 4 holes on the roster, you want to start on this one? Do you have any names?
I don't.
Vasilije Micic, by the way, who we talked about. We talked about him like 4 days ago, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I saw an article saying that he wants to stay in Europe. So
he just signed. I think somewhere.
Yeah, he re-signed. I think he's still with Anadolu Efes, but that dream is dead.
Yeah.
So where are we pivoting from there?
Well, I think it's actually kind of tough because it's difficult to really know what assets the Suns have left. The best way they can improve this team at this point, because of the free agency names left, is with trades. So we really would have to kind of know the options with the roster afterwards and see what we can do at that point. Obviously it just depends. It just depends. If you trade Mikal Bridges, I think your number one thing that you have to look at is a potential replacement for Mikal Bridges, a 3 who could guard a 1, which is one of the hardest things to find in the NBA if they have some sort of offensive upside. So it's tough.
You know what remaining free agent I could really talk myself into, but who would never in a million years come here?
Who?
Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, I see it.
Isn't he kind of one of the most interesting names left on the free agent market? And I understand there's a lot of bad blood there, and I think probably a lot of that has to do specifically with Robert Sarver. Not with James Jones necessarily, because James Jones wasn't in that front office that handled that whole fiasco.
And there's only one player left that he played with in Devin Booker, and that's it.
Wow, I forgot that there was even a player left that he played with. Yeah, he did play with Booker. Yeah. And otherwise, it's a complete fresh turnover. But he hates Robert Sarver. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Clutch still hates Robert Sarver. They are willing to do business with him, as we saw with Josh Okogie, who is it is Okogie, who's a Clutch client. Mm-hmm. So I don't actually believe that it would happen. I'm just kind of quickly scanning through the names here, and I'm like, would I rather have Rajon Rondo, or I keep bringing up Rajon Rondo, I think, every week, just as my example of someone who sucks. Would I rather have Rajon Rondo, or even like Dennis Schroeder, or Eric Bledsoe? I think Eric Bledsoe still has something to offer a team as long as he's willing to accept a bench role. But he's probably not interested in coming back to Phoenix.
Yeah. And like Dennis Schroeder, like the teams that he's been on, I think you can make a case that he's worse for a team than good. I think for those of you who are interested in Schroeder, I think I would disagree. And I think the Suns are probably just not at all interested in him, to be honest.
Both former Chris Paul teammates, though, interestingly enough, both Eric Bledsoe and Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it would be interesting. Eric Bledsoe, I think you could talk yourself into the upside, and I think at this point of his career, he's a 100% an upside player. Is he a free agent? Isn't he still? Doesn't he have like a player option or something that he could sign with the Trailblazers? Am I wrong about that?
He got waived, I think.
Oh, did he?
Is
okay.
What it was.
Well, that's what. That's
he got waived a couple weeks ago, which surprised me because, again, Bledsoe's not. he's not what he used to be anymore. But we're talking about veteran minimum contract here
Who
for a
can
guy
play
who can
defense.
he can still play some defense. He can still get to the rim a little bit. He's not a bad playmaker. I mean,
Can't
Eric
shoot
Bledsoe,
much anymore though, which I think would be
and
huge
he never,
for him at this point of his career.
He never really could
Yeah.
all that well, but I think his shelf life is still. I think he's got a few years left. Another guy who it kind of surprises me, and I understand why, because he's like the antithesis of every direction in which the NBA is headed. But it does kind of surprise me a little bit that no one's thrown LaMarcus Aldridge a bone at this point in the
Well, he's waiting,
point in the summer,
right, to just sign with whatever contender he could get onto, and I think
it
the
really
Suns are probably
does
not the
feel
best
like
fit for him. But
it does feel like LaMarcus Aldridge is waiting for the KD trade news to drop, and like he would be the guy. If I had to bet on any guy, next day we get the news to our phones of he's signed with Phoenix. That would be the guy.
Yeah, and he would immediately be the backup center, right? Especially in a scenario where Dario Saric leaves.
Yeah,
so that's
and like
good.
he was still good last year offensively.
Yeah,
he was.
What about
still
Blake
good.
Griffin?
Yeah, I'm not huge on Blake.
Yeah.
Anymore. I don't really love it.
Yeah, I think he was better than I thought he would be for the Nets, and they were not good with him on the floor. So yeah, I think I agree.
Dude, some of these point guard names are really hilarious. There's no good option. What can you imagine Facundo Campazzo signing with the Suns?
Yeah, no, I can't. I can definitely not imagine that. And same with Rondo. I mean, Rondo and Chris Paul hate each other. I know you use
They absolutely
him
hate
as an
each other,
example,
for
but
sure.
like
Yeah.
it's not a fake rivalry. I mean, they literally fist fought on the court.
No, yeah, they
in the past.
they literally hate each other. Rondo would sooner kill himself than sign with the Suns to be Chris Paul's backup. I feel pretty confident in saying that. He would sooner retire from the NBA.
Patrick Beverley,
there's no
how
way
about
he
that? Here's another name that could be gotten in a trade. Patrick Campbell said, you've discussed Ayton needing to add at least one dribble to be able to warrant more looks in the offense. Is there any other way to involve him more in the current offensive system? If not, should the Suns change their offensive scheme? Something we've actually never talked about before.
Yeah, do you want to take this one? Do you want to start on this one? The reason I do this, I know I said that DeAndre Ayton at the start of the episode. I said DeAndre Ayton is the highest potential player remaining on the Suns. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
In terms of he has the most growth left, the most potential growth. But at the same time, I'm struggle with what he is at this point in his career, and I've ranted. I've watched every game of DeAndre Ayton's career. We've recorded so many podcast episodes about what he is and what he could be. And at this point, it's just like there are things that I still think he could add to his plate. And then there are other things that we've talked about ad nauseum in the past where it's like, well, why are we wasting our time with this concept? Because it's probably just not in the cards for him. And so talking about, again, the whole development idea and what exactly Ayton could add next year, I'm not sure I have a firm idea of that anymore, like exactly where to start.
Well,
what do you think?
I'll boil it down to this. DeAndre Ayton just had his best offensive season ever, and it aligned with the most assisted buckets he's made, the highest percentage of assisted buckets he's ever made. So, can you force the ball to DeAndre Ayton more? Yes. Will that make the Suns better at this point? No, not really, and not unless he adds something else. I think the Suns are utilizing him offensively to the best of his abilities in his current abilities. The best way for him to be a 20-plus point per game player is to be able to create for himself further away from the basket. And I've said that 1,000 times. You've said it 1,000 times, and I think it remains true. But I do think that the way the question is often framed in pointing the ire at the Suns completely ignores the amount of development they've gone through with DeAndre to make him the player that he currently is. And I think what they've done with him is nothing short of amazing. And they've turned him from what was expected to be a terrible defensive player to one of the best defensive centers in the NBA. They've turned him from a player who was struggling to shoot from the outside to one of the most efficient players in the NBA at high volume. And I think that it's best for us to just acknowledge just how good they've done with DeAndre Ayton, while understanding that for him to become something more, he needs to, one, create for himself, and two, get to the line more. Those are the two easiest ways. And
okay, so like that's the stuff that we've ranted about for years. That's also kind of the stuff where I'm at the point where maybe he just doesn't have it, and maybe we just accept that. So I'm kind of interested in this sort of side question here. This wasn't the exact question, but it was part of the question. What if Ayton just never develops the mindset to attack the basket like we want him to get to the free throw line like we want him to? In my opinion, that means he's just not a self-creator. He's not an offensive star. He could be a defensive star. He's not an offensive star. But I do think it presents an interesting question. Is there anything else the Suns can do to better involve DeAndre Ayton in the offense if he just won't dribble the basketball? Part of it is like you posted the mid-range stats today. Mm-hmm. I think there's every reason to believe that DeAndre Ayton's first round, his mid-range shooting in the Pelicans series, which was fantastic, by the way, to remind people, like I think that was probably an outlier. But theoretically,
because it was insane, right? At
because
certain
it was
points,
insane,
he was
right?
shooting like 75% from mid-range. It was just one. It
was Anthony Davis bubble.
Yeah,
it was. What did they call him? A Disney. It was a Disney levels of mid-range shooting, where like he went from like he was a 40% mid-range shooter this season to like 53% in the playoffs or something. I think you posted today, and part of it is like if Ayton just shot 53% mid-range for a full year without even putting the ball on the floor, without dribbling, just face up shoot, he'll wreck defenses consistently and average like 23 points per game.
But what happens
just by
in
doing
that case? They play
what
up
do you mean
on
what
him,
happens in that case?
right? They take it away from
no,
him.
He needs to dribble. He still needs to dribble. Okay, but so that
the reason I think defenses have yet to catch up with his ability to shoot from mid-range, right? And I think the Dallas series, they did play up on him, and they took it away from him a little bit more. And if defenses continue to adjust to that, the next counter has to come still. And that's still not there.
Here's the other thing I wanted to talk about is we saw such remarkable improvement from Ayton in his ability to hit the hook shot from about 5 to 8 feet out in one season. Mm-hmm. He was already good. Like he already had the touch, to be clear, coming into the league.
Yeah,
we saw
he
such
didn't really have
remarkable
that
improvement.
shot. The attempts went up dramatically.
What's if he's just not a guy who's comfortable dribbling face up? Could he be a guy who's comfortable dribbling back to basket? And is there a distinction that could be made there? And does that lead to a natural counter? What's the next step in Ayton's development as a post player? Well, yeah, for sure.
Because he gets doubled,
but is
right?
there,
he's still turnover prone when he gets doubled.
But also, is there something else he needs to be adding to his post arsenal right now that's not just the hook shot? I think he can kind of go both ways with it, and I think that already gets him a long way close to being there, but
more of a left hand, I think,
there
would
are
probably
other
help,
developments,
right? I mean, he doesn't have much of a left hand yet. I would say that his touch is still good with his left hand, but he can't. The hook shot's like 99% of the time with his right hand. And then the other part is more fakes could probably get him to the line more. I think he had more fakes than at any point of his career this last season, because I think there was a chance that in the previous season he had like 10 up fakes that entire year in the post, whereas this last season there were a lot more. But I think more fakes, more of an arsenal moves to go to in the post could help him get to the line more as well. But look, I think we're still coming back to the same conversation that if you force the ball to him more at some point in the regular season until he has those skills down, it's going to make the Suns worse. So you're just gambling with just making the Suns worse in the regular season. I think some people think that's a worthy gamble, and maybe it is. But I think that you have to acknowledge that it's going to be ugly at first for a while. And I don't know that the Suns are willing to allow that to happen depending on the roster. I mean, maybe if KD's not on the Suns, that's the best way to get better. Maybe they should force it to him and see what it does.
I mean, if KD doesn't come to the Suns and you don't make the instant trade for another star player, this is why I'm kind of truthfully just down on this concept. I think there are individual things that I could appreciate about that team. I will always be very grateful to watch Devin Booker and like just be astounded by the things he does on the basketball court night to night, right? I would still have fun watching Mikal Bridges play defense, watching Chris Paul work the pick and roll, whatever. But like this is why I'm down on the concept of that as a cohesive idea, that team, the KD-less Suns, because your only avenues for improving, your only avenues for winning a championship at that point is either Devin Booker makes the leap to become an MVP player or DeAndre Ayton makes the leap to become like as good as Devin Booker in terms of a 1 and 2 scenario. And I think as an offensive player, and I think both of those are just, it would be relying on faith more than history and statistics and all that other stuff, more so than I'm comfortable with.
I think that if you're expecting that sort of jump from DeAndre Ayton and you're wondering why we would discourage the Suns from forcing it to him, I'll ask you, just give me an example of a player that was contact and dribble averse as much as DeAndre Ayton has been throughout his career that just developed it at some point 5th or 6th year in. There's really not any examples of it. It just rarely happens. Like somebody like Joel Embiid never really was contact averse to start his career. Yes, he got more and more and more free throw attempts as he learned how to game the system as it went along. But you could see that he wasn't afraid of dribbling. You could see that he wasn't afraid of contact his rookie year, which was, of course, his second year in the NBA. So, it's just hard to find examples where you could say this is proof that it's happened before. At this point, I think you're right that maybe we're talking about he is what he is. And I think the best case scenario for DeAndre Ayton, and I don't expect this particular thing to happen, if we're saying this is what he is offensively, which is great still, now I want to preface everything with that, but not somebody you could build your offensive around, then what would make him benefit the Suns the most? And that, to me, is embracing the concept that he has the physical ability to be a defensive player of the year level defensive player. And if you were to embrace that fully, I think that he could still have this outsized effect on the Suns that could still make them close to the best team in the NBA just from that alone. And I don't know that he has that in him or if that's what he's interested in. But if he ever were to do that, I think it would have a larger impact than forcing him the ball in the offense more and more and more.
We really are, nothing against you, nothing against me, but we really are just running in circles with some of these arguments. I mean, we've been saying the same stuff for years. And that's what makes it tough about the idea of covering the Phoenix Suns in a non-KD path next year, because we're going to be saying a lot of the same things again and trying to trick ourselves into the idea that it's different this time, and I don't know that it would be any different.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let's see. I'm skipping some more questions that just are sort of similar to that, just to try and get some more since we're getting close to an hour here. Let's see. If a Lundberg question? No. Okay. I remember having us. If Lundberg just signed a contract today.
Good for him.
In Europe,
I didn't see that.
It's the largest contract ever by a Danish player, from what I've seen. So that's pretty cool for him. Let's see. I've seen a lot about how the Suns can improve the backup point guard position. How can the team improve some of the rebounding issues it suffered towards the regular season and in the playoffs? This is from Eric O'Keefe. Sam,
Yes.
I'm giving you the opportunity to bring up a player that I know you love that could be on the trade block right now.
Go get Jared Vanderbilt from the Utah Jazz. Save him from that state. He could. I don't know, but I mean, that's the player you were thinking of, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, yeah, I love Jared Vanderbilt, but more generally, how could they improve the rebounding situation? What about a possibility? I mean, if Jay Crowder is gone, does Torrey Craig play a lot of minutes this year?
Yeah, I think he definitely could. Yeah, I think if you lose both Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges in a trade, and you could still potentially trade Jay Crowder, if he still remains somehow, which I think in that case you might lose all three. Then I think there's a chance Torrey Craig.
I think there's
entirely too much, I would say.
No, I know. And after the season he just had and the fact that you had to give up Jalen Smith for him, and I understand Suns fans kind of being generally down on the idea of Torrey Craig going into this year, but I think if there's one thing you just have to hand to him, yes, he struggles with the 3-point shooting gravity, and the offense in general just kind of wasn't there. And I don't even think the defense was there to the extent we wanted. But if there's one thing that Torrey Craig consistently kills, it's rebounding. Mm-hmm. He's that's his best asset. That's his best skill. For his size, he's a tremendous rebounder, especially on the offensive end. If he just played more, that definitely helps.
Which is bad.
Presents holes. And
if Kevin Durant's here, it's better. But he needs to. I don't know. Can I just quickly shift back to Vanderbilt? In just to say that if Kevin Durant was on the Suns, there is essentially no better fit in the NBA at small ball 5
for sure.
that could potentially be available than Jared Vanderbilt. And the idea of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, whoever, we'll say Mikal Bridges in this imaginary scenario.
Probably a Koji, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe a Koji, yeah. Durant and then Vanderbilt in scenarios where you need a small ball 5 and Ayton's on the floor.
Okogie and Vanderbilt together might be disastrous because that's two of the worst shooters in the NBA.
Yeah.
But no spacing. And
Shamit. We'll just put Shamit in there, whatever.
Sure.
And just say him. And then
Damian
Vanderbilt,
Lee.
like the idea of, like a Kevin Durant, Vanderbilt pick and roll, Vanderbilt running some sort of, short roll option, or even just standing in the dunker spot, being prepared to cut if Durant is in the short roll option. It's beautiful. And the rebound is still great.
And mostly he would just be a dunker spot guy on offense, but then defense, he's going to be switchable. He's going to rebound the hell out of the ball. I mean, look, Jared Vanderbilt can play small ball 5. The Wolves have done it before. I'd be sorry that now he's on the Jazz, but in the past, the Wolves had done it before. We've never seen it in like super long stretches, so I do think it would be interesting to see how a guy who's like probably 220, 230 pounds holds up
6'9",
consistently
214 is what he's listed at.
Yeah, that's tough. That's going to be tough against
and by the way,
centers
6'9",
on the regular.
214, and per 36 minutes is averaging 12 rebounds. It's absurd. He's an absurd rebounder. 4.1 offensive rebounds per 36 minutes for a guy who's not even 6'10".
He has a really rare motor. I mean, even going back to his Kentucky stats, I think he averaged 15 to 20 rebounds per 40 minutes in Kentucky his 1 year there or something. It's what got him into the NBA. The fact that he's not a particularly skilled offensive player, but has a tremendous motor. And yeah, it would be interesting. I don't actually know that he's on the trade market specifically. Have you seen anything about that?
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard essentially everyone is available. Yeah, essentially, yeah. And they're just
he'd kind of be like he's kind of just like a supercharged version of Bruce Brown, right?
Yeah,
like what the
taller,
Nets were already doing.
Bigger.
Yeah, just taller, bigger, better rebounder, but otherwise kind of similar in sort of what he'd be doing. And look, I think that lineup worked when the Nets ran it and when they were healthy. So
you couldn't start with Vanderbilt, to be fair. Obviously the Suns have Ayton anyway, so the starting center. But yeah, just in that imaginary scenario where Kevin Durant's on the team, Vanderbilt is just a really fun option at small ball 5, and the Suns could potentially get him if he's available. Let's do a few more, and then we'll call it quits here. Eugenius05 said, if KD comes to the Suns, what do you all think of a Suns at Warriors Christmas game? I mean,
amazing. I think
pretty
it's a
likely,
must.
Right?
I think it's an absolute must.
Well, I'll say
otherwise,
one thing.
I'm kind of curious. Yeah,
Warriors and Grizzlies fans just hate each other now, and that would be fun too. Because there's just that. We have Ja Morant and Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins talking shit to each other during their parade, and there's that whole. That's a rivalry that's brewing that the NBA could make a lot of money off of, I think. So I could see the Warriors being matched up with the Grizzlies. If the Suns had KD at that point, who would they play? I don't know. Maybe the Nets?
The Mavs?
The Mavs? Yeah, I think the Mavs could be another one.
I think they could put us, as things currently stand, KD or no KD, I could see us playing Christmas against the Mavs.
Yeah. Well, it's clear. It appears that Luka Doncic and Devin Booker just hate each other. That appears to be a thing now, and that could be something that lasts for a long time. And of course, Suns fans that say, or NBA fans that say things like the NBA is not like it used to, will also hate that two players hate each other in the modern NBA. So yeah,
I can smell the toxicity from here of a Suns Mavs Christmas game. By the way,
yeah, I know you're right. It'll ruin Christmas unless we win. One more.
Go for it.
Don's Bread said, who is the Homelander of the NBA?
Now this is fun. Can we talk about this?
Sure.
Can you be honest with me?
Sure.
So I started The Boys recently. Homelander is a character in The Boys.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most popular shows in the history of the universe, and people are talking about it, which is why I just started it. I am one episode away from finishing season 1. So just so everyone knows where I am in the show, I'm not going to do any spoilers, and anything I talk about here is very, very much based on not the most recent stuff. You are not a super huge fan of the show. You told me, I think I tweeted out that I was starting it, and I think you literally sent my own tweet to me in DMs and just said, meh.
Yeah.
Can you explain your position? Because I'm loving it so far, but I'm not caught up.
I have been encouraged by many people to watch that show. So I did finally give it a chance. I got about halfway through season 2 and just said, I'm not really having fun, and stopped watching. Now, I'll say two things. I'll say two things about it. One, minor spoiler. Can I do a minor spoiler here?
It better be minor. It really better be minor.
There is a Nazi plot line.
Okay.
In season 2, and I was just like, all right, another thing about Nazis. Like, is this all people can write about now? Is Nazis? Like, everything is Nazis? And I just kind of rolled my eyes at that and got a lot less interested. My understanding is that's not like this persistent plot line throughout the course of the rest of the show, but it just made me less interested in it because it's just like everything is Nazis. But I also think that for this show, conceptually, it's brilliant. The idea of, and this is also minor spoilers, so if you don't watch The Boys, just skip this entirely. You can end the podcast now. This will be our last question. But if you do, then you understand this. The idea of a like weapons manufacturing company that creates superheroes is an excellent idea and a fascinating concept for a show. The execution of the show, I'll just boil it down to this, should be funnier. It's not funny at all. And I find for something,
I think it's kind of funny. I mean, again, I haven't watched as much as you, but I think it's pretty funny so far. A lot of the humor is
derived from like gross out humor.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, just to give you an example of an episode I watched, again, this is very early in the series, but like Chase Crawford's character, the Deep, like rescuing a dolphin from
yes,
a SeaWorld. And it's not SeaWorld, but it's like,
yes,
you know, whatever, Ocean World or whatever their version of it is, so they don't get sued. And then like losing that dolphin through the windshield of a truck and watching it get hit and explode
yes, that's
as
funny.
It gets hit
right.
by a truck. Like there are moments that are really funny in the show to me.
Maybe I just hit a patch in season 2 that I find less interesting, and that just made me bail on it. That really could be all it is. And I probably won't ever watch it, I'll be honest.
Last thing I'll say here. Well, I'll take the other side in that. No guarantees that I'm going to love the entire thing, but I think it's amazing so far. It's exactly the brand of cynicism that like I go for in relating things to the real world. And Homelander, Anthony Starr is his name, the main actor, right?
Yeah.
Has completely blown me away through most of season 1. The guy who plays Homelander, he's been absolutely fantastic. So to address Brad's question, finally, what was the question?
Who is the Homelander of the NBA?
Of the NBA, I mean. The Homelander of the NBA has to be someone who's what exactly?
A villain?
Like,
I mean,
clean in the public eye, but a villain behind the scenes.
That's interesting.
Is it Steph Curry? No, I don't think Steph has a bad bone in his body, to be honest. But like, who's kind of? Is it Giannis?
Is it Myers Leonard?
It's definitely not. The Myers Leonard is probably the Deep, based on what I've seen so far.
Patrick Beverly, no, he's everyone. I mean, he's a villain. Patrick Beverly.
I mean, is it kind of Chris Paul? Like, no, I mean, like Chris Paul.
That, yeah,
Chris Paul is like former head of the Players Association in the State Farm commercials, head of the Players Association, very much like public facing, face of the league,
right?
But people kind of hate him. And he's kind of evil. Yeah. He's kind of evil with his antics. And I could see maybe it's Chris Paul. I can't think of a better. I mean, like LeBron is Doncic, like the obvious.
I mean, Doncic is out there.
I don't think. Yeah, probably wouldn't go.
You don't find it at least a little bit funny that the moment Jalen Brunson could leave that team, he did.
No, I find it very funny.
And at least halfway through the season, everyone knew it was going to happen. I just find that to be a little bit interesting. At the very least, the other best player on that team just bolted as soon as they could, and now they're starting JaVale McGee, I guess, on that team. So that'll be kind of interesting. All right, I guess we settled it. I will say, for those who do like that show, I get it. I definitely understand why people like that show. It just couldn't hold me, and I think I do understand why people like it. It just couldn't hold me. That's really all it was.
You know what I am gonna start pretty soon though, based on your suggestion. I'm gonna watch The Bear. I've been hearing a lot
about
from you, from my roommate, from a lot of people being like, watch this show.
Way more my speed. Way more my speed than The Boys, personally. I just
my friend basically you'll get this. My friend basically sold me on it by being like, oh yeah, dude, they play like Kevin Morby and Andrew Bird in the soundtrack. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
A lot of like older alt rock songs in the soundtrack in general, like all the way back to the 90s. And it's just like superbly acted, and it's an amazing show. I'm glad
that's an FX show, right? I'm glad they've kind of found their niche of I mean, just exactly that, right? Like, is it a comedy or is it a drama or is it like I don't know what it is exactly, but they've certainly found their niche of like kind of weird shows like that.
Exactly. All right, well, that's all we got for now. Appreciate everyone for asking questions. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. We do these every once in a while, so if you got one, hold on to it. I'm sure we'll do another one before the season begins. If you're interested in our Patreon, you can join patreon.com/thetimeline. We have a Discord we're having a lot of fun in, and we'll probably do another mailbag for them at some point very, very soon as well. So thank you guys, and we'll be back soon.